possible.
I'm losing most of that audio. Let me
Oh,
come back.
hold on.
Yeah, I am too, actually. Can you hear me any better, Grant?
I can hear you
I
just
could hear
fine,
you.
but Neo, it sounds
Okay.
like it almost sounds like it's shorting out, actually.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I'm getting. So while you're fixing your audio, Neo, I think what Neo just asked is, if you had to have advice on where the follower can just pendulum versus lower out,
Yeah,
we'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because
yeah,
because we're short fixing, that helps a little bit, but we want that, we want the follower to be there as soon as possible. So
right.
yeah, so if you have any advice on like places where we might screw up if we pendulum, or
Right.
places where we really can do that.
Yeah, like my buddy Dr. Yoho, who he's a really good climber. He put up El Matador back in the 70s at Devil's Tower, and I've done El Capitan 2 or 3 times. He's done it with Hans and a few other. He used to climb with Renan Oster for a little bit. He was the traverse from the top of Sickle over to the left facing corner by Dolt Hole, where you can either go up the boat ladder and do the big traditional swing over to the bottom of Stovies, or you can do the 512 traverse, or you can do the lower out swing over. So they were doing the traditional one, and he was doing a lower out. His lower out line was too short, and he swung over and hit that thing, crushed his ankle, and had to wrap all the way down and crawl out, and he's never been the same. So watch the pendulums, obviously in the corners, but there are places you can do it. What we do,
I've heard of a couple broken bones on that one specifically.
Yeah, that one's really bad. You just, it's kind of lower angle, so you're kind of comfortable. Oh yeah, I can control it, but that corner's a good ways over. And so what I usually do is I'll climb up Sickle, and there's another little kind of sickle shaped crack up above it with 2 bolts. And what I do is I kind of free that 512A section. I kind of free tension traverse on that 12A slabby section, and then lower out the next bolt and do a little swing over into it, and then put in a piece of gear, and then lower out a little bit more, go around the corner, and then free climb up the stows at like 5.8 or 5.9. So you can do the traditional one with the pendulum, but not go as far up that bolt ladder, the old Dolt bolt ladder there. You can, but I find that to be a little tedious. The best place, so you want to do more pengies and less lower outs. I've seen a bunch of different ways that people do the big one on King Swing. I've only done the King Swing once. I always free climb the Jardine Traverse, kind of free climb over to the 11C corner, and I'll show you that pitch up there. I think that's faster than going to the top of El Cap, doing the Texas Flake, doing the bolt ladder to the boot, doing the boot, lowering out, swinging over, then setting up either the lower out or the pendulum. I think it's faster. I've got it pretty dialed. And if you've done like at Joshua Tree, if you've done Course and Buggy, that little thin corner crack, you ever done that classic one there? It's one of my favorite ones at J Tree. If you're comfortable on Course and Buggy with small gear that you can hang on, that corner, it's longer, but it goes much like that. It's kind of slick, steep, little kind of oblique corner. I think that's faster. So as I kind of walk you through the pitches, I can tell you the different ways that we've done it, that we found to be pretty efficient, if that'll help.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
So there's the share. All right. So can you guys see the screen share now? So you probably spent a lot of hours on this, man. If we'd had this all the years ago when I first did the nose, it probably would have scared me to death, actually. So it sounds like you guys I probably would have just stayed in my car and looked up at the wall. So you guys have kind of got these first pitches dialed. You know about watching out for this flake and the Z, the kind of lightning bolt flake, because those do catch people's ropes and cause all kinds of problems. So when you get to when you get the Sickle, you can just kind of simul run up it and belay like I think the belay is probably like right here, right? Is my cursor showing up on your screen share too? Yeah. And so this is all pretty easy.
We can see it.
Yeah, cool. Okay. This is all pretty easy. But then when you get to this section right here, it becomes vertical. And then right here, this actually starts to, you can't see it from this angle, but this actually overhangs very slightly. And so you have to exit out right here at this track. And it's just kind of strenuous. And if this, when the second person is jugging and cleaning, this is the first place where like, okay, this is going to take some work climbing this thing. So you get out, oh no, I'm sorry, here's a little exit. You can see the climber on there, right? So you exit out as it gets real steep. You pop up this arching crack for a little bit. And then the bolts are actually like right here. And I had the second most terrifying moment I ever had on El Cap was I was following my buddy Reed up there. He was doing the first block to the top of Sickle, and I got up there and there's a bunch of tack, and he had tied in to a bunch of like like big steel rings, like you see on sport climbs. And I got up to him. I look at the steel rings. I'm like, Reed, those are aluminum rack rings. Those aren't steel, and they were already bending under all of our weight. And we were like, ah! And so we're like clipping gear into the bolts like crazy. And, we were trying to go fast, and he clipped something that probably wouldn't have broken, but anyways, just be super careful. So what I've done a number of times here is you can do like a 12A, anywhere between 511 and 512 and kind of tension traverse. There's a series of bolts going across. And what I'll usually do is, kind of tension traverse and or free climb across. It's not too bad. It's like 12A slabby. And get into here and then either lower out on the last bolt, which is about here, and come down and cross at one of these two breaks. This one's a little harder. This one's a little easier if I remember right. And then what you're aiming for, this is the base of the stove legs right here. And then you do some pretty easy climbing. It's like 5/8 to get over there. And then somewhere right around here is like a 2-bolt, 3-bolt anchor, I think. So have you guys been up that high yet? Have you passed Sickle?
We haven't gotten to. Weather stopped us last run.
Okay. So yeah, I'll just kind of run through these pitches with bits of advice, and I am recording this, and I'll be able to send you a link after, so you can go back through it. But just stop me at any time if you want to ask questions. Stove legs is great. I mean, if this was like at some local roadside crag, you'd have to wait in line for 5 hours to get onto it. If you're pretty comfortable with 5'10", hand, fist, some wide. Most of this is like slammer 5/8 all through here. And at the end of every rope length or so, there's you step to the right and there's going to be 3 massive like half-inch bolts right there. What you tend to run into problems with stove legs is that it's one of the few places where it's really hard to pass people. And there's always Gumbies up there with 2 weeks of big wall camping stuff and all these haul bags. And, they've been up there for 4 days and they're climbing 100 feet a day and they're just moving really slow. And so, if you start real early in the morning on a weekday, early season like this, you might be okay, but you might get stuck behind people. And it's just kind of one of the logistical things you have to deal with. So anyways, once you get into the wide section up here, there's not really much wide stuff on the nose. And so, I don't know tell me about the size of the rack that you're thinking about taking. What are you looking at? Like a standard nose in a day rack, about 18, 20 pieces, something like that, small to medium, large.
Something like that. Yeah. We're doing probably double rack, 0.3 to 4. Probably bring 2 4s. I think that's optional, but we'll probably do that.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, depending on what you think. But and then we got some like offsets, basically offset sizes that are gonna fit in pin scars. So
yeah, those are very helpful.
Yeah, 0.75, 0.5.
Yeah.
And 0.5, 0.4.
Yeah, that sounds good. And so what happens is, you'll get up into here and it gets a little wide, but the climbing's not that hard and it's actually very featured there. You just got to get out of the tunnel vision of slamming your hands into the crack and look around. There's places you can stem out. There's a lot of flakes here and there. It's not very hard climbing. And then it kind of,
Where does the time go in the stove legs?
what is the what?
You know, they say it takes like, where does the time go when you're in the stove legs? Because if you're hour and a half into sickle, and
Yeah.
then 4 hours, 5 hours, I mean, is that like 2.5, 3 hours through that? Like like what, yeah, where is that time going?
Um, a lot of people aren't, it's the first place where you're doing kind of pretty exposed, pretty technical, and it's a little bit wide, and people aren't usually as comfortable with that. And sometimes people get behind the party. Sometimes people don't like running out. I mean, oh, this doesn't look that long from, let's say here to here, but it's a pretty good way. It's like 700 feet or so, and you just have to motor it, and a lot of people just aren't competent enough to put in a piece of gear, motor for 15 or 20 feet, put in a piece of gear, motor. You just have to bang, 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 bang. It's just not a place to hang out. There are not very many holds on the face at all, so it's basically pure, 510A Yosemite crack climbing. And I've seen a lot of people just going slowly because they're tired of doing the same repetitive motion. So I think it's mostly a fitness thing. And so if you're aiming for hitting sickle in say 2 hours, getting up to here in under three, and then you want to get to stove legs. I mean, I've never needed to spend, even at the most, maybe 3 or 4 hours on stove leg at the most, and that's when we were behind parties. And we would just try to motor past them as best as we could. So I think it's probably people just start to get psyched out because now you're up off the deck pretty far, and it's just, you look up and it's just completely blank, and you just see this crack going up it. And I think it's the first place that gets really intimidating for people. It's the first part that's pretty steep. It's pretty vertical. So I did an attempt once with my partner Reed, and it was the first time we were trying to do the get to gray bands as the sun comes up and climb the first half in the dark. And so it was very windy and cold, so I was belaying him right from here. There's a kind of an awkward belay stance in this wide section. It's almost like a chimney, and he was leading up, and he started yelling down that he was exhausted, and he didn't know if he'd go much further. And he finally said, "I'm on a shelf." And I didn't know that there was a shelf. So we get to this little triangular ledge, right? And we were completely wasted. It was very windy and cold. It was, pitch black. And we look up and we see this kind of, off width here, and it's slightly overhanging at the top maybe. And we just decided, you know what, too dangerous. Can't go on, can't go on, can't go on. We were too tired. We'd actually driven up from LA that day. So we were wasted. So we hooked into this like 3 bolts on the wall here, and we just sat here and dangled. Next morning, a Naiad team comes motoring up the crack, and he's like, "What are you guys doing?" We're like, "We were tired. We spent the night here. How far to Dolt?" And he was like, 30 feet. So we were just below Dolt. And if we had gotten to Dolt, we'd have slept, we'd have been fine, and we probably would have topped out. But we sat here with our legs dangling off, freezing anyways. So yeah, if you can get to Dolt with a lot of energy and get up there in 4 to 5 hours, you're good. From there, it's really just a matter of keeping it moving. The next segment involves down climbing. It's pretty easy, down climb into here. Now, this is not hard through here, but I've led it several times and I always have trouble with it. I don't know why. You down climb here, kind of a tension lower down climb, and then you get into this kind of crack thing over here, and you have to climb this kind of awkward chimney. It's like 5'7" or 5'8", but it's really weird, awkward, squeezy, and for some reason, and you can't really protect it. And so I've just wigged out and been way too slow there a couple of times. So you just kind of have to push through that. Once you get onto this block here, you're in this gorgeous, like endless 5'9" fist crack. It's very steep and clean. The best way to do this is, take your number 3 and your number 4 and just, keep one in and push the other up, right? So you have to be gutsy and careful with it. You know, I kind of tend to French free it, but it's beautiful, beautiful. You know, once you get up into here, then you're just in this incredible kind of broken porcelain granite that El Cap is so famous for. But the climbing is very straightforward. Once the angle kicks back right here, then it becomes easy. It's like 5.7 or 5.8, and then you pretty much just run it right up to El Cap Tower. The actual ledge for El Cap Tower is right here. It's not this broken up stuff down here. El Cap Tower is here, but because the angle of the photograph, you know, this looks angled, but it's actually a big flat ledge. And this right here, you know, I mean, it's so big that like you could untie and you'd feel safe. Don't, but you could. Okay. Now, there's two options. You know, the classic option, of course, is to go up. You get into Texas Flake on this side. This is very easy right here. You know, 5, 6 broken up. You get inside of Texas Flake. You move in about 7 or 8 feet. You climb up. There's a chicken bolt, maybe 30 or 40 feet up. Just to scale it, this is Boot Flake, which is about 60 or 70 feet tall. So this is about a 70 or 80 foot flake with about a 60 or 70 foot pitch in it. So it's a good ways from your Blair at El Cap Tower to the top of Texas. And Texas Flake is like that. I mean, it's like 10 inches thick at the top. There's 2 bolts in the wall there. So you go up inside, you know, most people clip the chicken bolt at about, you know, I don't know, 30, 40 feet up inside the flake. But it's not that hard. I found it easier to stay closer to the edge of the flake because then I could reach around the outside. And it's really mind-blowing because when you pop out on the top, it's a phenomenal, like the exposure hits you because now you're at, you know, 1,500, 1,600 feet, I think, and you've been inside that flake, and it's really quite amazing. Now, I've done the traditional route where you go up and do the big swing, but something that you might consider if you guys are strong free climbers would be to do the Jardine Traverse because it can save time. Jardine Traverse doesn't get done that often. I've actually free climbed all the moves. It's like very soft 12A. It's just kind of little tiny granite crimps. And what happens is there's a dike, kind of a quartz dike. You belay from here, and you go across a slightly rising bolt ladder. It's not rising as much as this angle seems to suggest, but the bolts, you'll see them, they go right across this blank wall. I don't even remember how many bolts are, but you can actually, you know, clip a bolt and yard yourself in real tight with your daisy and reach over and clip the next bolt. You can kind of tension swing across. There's different ways you can do it. At the end of it, you have to do a couple like 5, 10 free moves, and the bolt is down and right, and it's exposed, a little scary. Then you do this really funky mantle on some crumbly rock. But once you do that and you're here, it turns into easy 5.9, but there's not really any pro, so it's kind of run out. You can get some pro in right behind this flake, and then you get to this stance at the base of the 511C corner, and this is the one that's a lot like horse and buggy. It's maybe slightly harder, but you can get pro in anywhere. Where horse and buggy, it's a little sketchy, especially at the start. So you can go right up this gorgeous corner, and if you're comfortable with like 11C stemming and little tiny fingertip locks that turn into finger locks, and then thin hands when you get here, and then wide hands. This is it's one of my favorite free pitches on the route, actually. I did have my scariest moment ever on this, if you do this variation, so I'm going to warn you. I don't know if this thing is still here or not, but I was going up this thing. I had a number 2 or number 3 here, and I've got about 40 feet of climbing left, and I have I don't know, probably a number 3.5 or maybe a 4 on my rack. And I know it gets wide and it gets steep right here. So I'm going up. And right here, there was like a big flake, like probably 2 feet long, 3 or 4 inches thick, and it was jammed back into the crack, and it sticks out about 8 or 9 inches, and there's all kind of tat wrapped around it, right? And so I clipped on as much tat as I could just as a backup. And so, you know, I'm a little tired because I'm laybacking and I'm at the end of a long kind of hard pitch. And So I grabbed the flake and I put my arm around it to clip the tack, and that thing rotated and started sliding down the crack. And it rotated, I don't know, 80 degrees and slid down the crack like 2 feet. And I was screaming like a, because what I'm thinking is I'm going to pull this out and it's going to cut my rope and kill my belay too. But it stopped rotating. Anyways, I was done at that point. It was really hot. I was dehydrated. So I finished the pitch and I said, that's it. I'm calling it. And we wrapped off at that point. It was not that big a deal. I just lost it mentally. This was probably 16 or 17 years ago. Second.
Holy smokes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Jeez.
if you go that way and you see a big flake with a bunch of tack, just be aware that even on, heavily traveled trade routes like the nose, there are still things you have to watch out for like that. It was one of the scariest things that's ever happened.
Good warning. Yeah.
Okay. But other than that, and it may be gone, I don't know. Other than that, this is great climbing here. And if there's a party of Gumbies on here that are taking like a week to do the nose and they got all their haul bags and stuff, I once passed a party of 6 Koreans with 7 haul bags, and they were at the bottom of the stove legs and they'd been up there 3.5 days. And I told them, I said, and I said, dudes, go down. It's dangerous to keep going at that pace. You're going to run out of water and then you're not going to get down. So there's always people up here fooling around and being slow. If it's empty, the king swing is great. But I actually prefer this version. It's a good way to pass people, and it's magnificent free climbing. Once you get to the top where it's steep and wide right here, you just plug in your last cam and you run it out like 15 or 18 feet. Right before you get to the top, there's a little horizontal. If you're focused on the layback, you won't notice that there's like a perfect, horizontal finger crack, and it kind of comes around it, and it's very easy to move around here and then yard up and mantle here. And then you're where the end of the king swing is. And you're at the base of the gray band. So how are you guys planning on doing if you do the traditional, if you do the king swing, which everybody should do it once. It's like the most spectacular thing in the world. Are you planning on doing it the traditional way? Because it can be done faster. There's nobody up
there. That was our plan. Yeah. Like one of us do the swing, and then the other one would probably wait at the top of boot and then lower out after the person that swung gets to the next belay.
Yeah. That's probably the fastest, simplest way to do it. There's like 10 different variations of ways people do it. That's easier. Second man doesn't get to do the cool swing, but you just got to make sure you have a lot of low out, because it's a long low out. So you got to make sure you have plenty of, if you're using your rope, you're doing, your tie-in low out, as opposed to like, I always carried a long piece of like, 6 or 7 millimeter, I don't remember what. And I just kept it like a lasso looped at my waist, and it was tied into my harness. So I could do a real quick, 20 or 30 foot low out anywhere at any time. It saves a lot of time, because there's all these places on the nose, especially from the top of sickle, about even below sickle, some of those places where you're moving from one bolt to another, where it helps to just be able to, feed that thing through and lower yourself out by hand real quick. You just got to be careful. But that's a fast way to do it. And it's how that thing is still on there, I have no idea. It just feels like it's just like glued like a Post-it note. The free climbing on it is really good, but it's very slick, and make sure if you free it, it's like 10. It felt like 10B to me. Most people call it 10B or C, I think, but it is very slick, and that's where what's her name, Brett Quinn. She fell from pretty close to the top, and her last piece of gear was down here, and that's not good, because you do not want to hit that flake down there. So then
does it take gear, or is it flary?
It eats gear. What happens is, if you do the traditional, what happens is you get to the top of this guy here, and I'm telling you, it's that wide, and there's room for 2 people to like en cheval, like horse straddle it, and that's it. You can stand on it, but the bolts are a little bit low for that, I think. So what happens is there is a kind of a bit of a natural weakness and a dike that comes from the top of Texas flake, and it's got, I don't know how many bolts, and then right here it becomes a very thin crack, and the bolt ends. So if you had like sawed off bugaboos or lost arrows, you tap them right in there. This part has always unnerved me on clean gear. So have a couple of tiny aliens, a little offset nuts, and just don't space them out too much. If you're nervous about doing pure aid, this is one of the few pure aid sections on the route. And the first 3 or 4 placements are they're like baby alien, like 2 heads. But you got a line of bullets below you, so you're not going to get hurt, but it's just a little unnerving. And then after that, it opens up to like, number 1, number 2 stoppers. And then as soon as you get to the base of the flake, it just eats gear. You can put it in anywhere you want. But there's really no rests on it, and there aren't any significant features on either side. And it's a narrow, the boot flake's only like, it's like this thick at the base and maybe 2 feet at the top, 1.5 at the top. So it's thin, and there's not much featuring around it. It's pretty slick. So you just have to motor it. You just have to go, okay, here's 60 feet of 510, jam and lay back. You just got to motor it. You can put in gear anywhere you want. A bunch of, red cams, green cams, the old Camelot. When you lower out, I'm sure you've read, you want to get, your tie-in point at the level of the toe of the boot, or a little bit lower. I've actually tended to go a little bit lower there. It just makes it getting over to the crack a little bit easier. That way you don't have to do any of the intermediate clip and lower swings. You can make it right over to here pretty easily over to there. And then it gets nebulous for a little while, and people actually get lost because there's a lot of tat and a lot of old fixed pins, and the rock gets weird. You go through this, big diorite band here, and again, just to scale it, if this is 60 or 70 feet, you got a couple pitches to get to the bottom of Great Roof. And so essentially, you go straight up this crack system, aiming for this roof. And then you'll see a lot of tat and fixed gear. You'll start to see some chalk, because this is pretty easy face climbing. It's like 5-7 moves, 5-9 moves, couple 5-10 moves here and there. The rock is a little rotten, and it doesn't protect as well as all those, slammer hand cracks do on the rest of the nose. But you'll pass over below this big left facing corner, and you'll see the roof. It's up there. You kind of work across all this stuff, and you're basically aiming for this area here. And once you get to there, you can follow these kind of corner ramp systems up to the belay for the Great Roof pitch, which is right here. There's a bunch of bolts and fixed pins and all kinds of crap, and it's a decent belay. There's plenty of room there. So this is the one that requires like the face climbing on broken granite face kind of technique. It'll feel like the crappier portions of I don't know if you've ever climbed at Riverside Quarry out in Fontana, but it'll feel like the crappier parts of Riverside Quarry climb. A friend of mine, Dr. Gonzalez, was just below this roof, and I was belaying him, and the sun was coming up, and we were gonna do about a 15 or 16 hour naiad that time, and he pulled off a rock and took a 40-footer, dropped way down. I mean, he's like 2,000 feet off the ground. He takes a 40-footer. He's like, pulls himself back up and finishes it. So just watch out for a little bit of loose rock. It's not that unusual to pull stuff up. So you work your way up through this. It's pretty easy though.
Quick question, rewinding like one pitch. So the person that swung is at Eagle. Do you have to back clean that whole pitch when you're going up from Eagle Ledge up to the next belay?
Like from here to where this guy is, or up to the little overhang?
Yeah.
No, if I remember correctly, it'll take a variety of pieces, and the rack that we've usually taken wasn't monstrous. It was basically like a double rack, and we did not have to do any kind of back cleaning because there's so many cracks and flakes.
I think my question is, so after the swing, if your partner's going to lower out behind you, will they be low enough to clean between
Oh, I
Eagle
see.
Ledge and 15?
Yeah, they should be.
They will.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, they should be.
So you
Yeah,
don't need to just like, yeah, back clean or do
yeah. I'm sorry.
shenanigans to get up
I
there.
I misunderstood the question. I think the frogs were distracting me. So
No, no,
uh,
no, no worries.
yeah, no, I don't think that that's an issue. Yeah, and then you can. I mean, if you need to lower them out a few more yards, you can always do that. But that shouldn't be necessary. Yeah, I don't remember having any back cleaning issues there. This whole section goes pretty smoothly, and the climbing is really good. It doesn't become, the only subpar climbing, and it's not even bad climbing, it's just not as good as the other stuff, is moving through the diorite band here. So the roof pitch is every bit as spectacular, as it looks. Um, and it starts off hard and it gets harder. I remember the first time I did it. I mean, I used to see Lynn Hill climbing at the Gunks back in the 80s, and she once stood right next to my wife. They're both exactly the same height and build. They're both very athletic, but she has very small hands. And I mean, I could never get these sausages into that crack. I just don't even understand it. I mean, it's almost like a 0-0 alien crack. Like, how do you get your fingers in there and your feet up? Anyways, it's astonishing that she or anyone else has ever free climbed it. But aiding it is very easy. There's always some thick stuff, especially once you get into the curve over part. Um, there's always a couple of wires and little cams that get stuck up in there and things like that. So this is not really very difficult at all. And then you'll have a kind of a funky step across move here. And at that point, now you're in the upper dihedral section, and it's pretty much a straight shot to the summit, but now you've got all the hard, really steep stuff. So you've got to arrive at the base of Pancake with a full tank of gas. But I never did. I was always exhausted, and I'm like, all right, just punch through the pain and we'll deal with it tomorrow. Pancake flake is straightforward. I recommend, freeing it. It's fast, it's easy, it's clean, it's middle 510. It's not even super sustained, actually. It eats gear. But I will warn you, the story. My buddy Hans did they'd either forgotten or they dropped some of their small gear. But he'd done it so many times that this first section here is not that hard. It's like 510A, beautiful climbing. And then there's a little triangular shelf here. And then for about 15, 25 feet, something like that, it's real thin, like it's tips thin. And it's like number 2, number 3 stopper at the most, or tiny, tiny, tiny cams or offsets. And he was like, I've done this a bunch of times. I can do it. It's not that hard. And he got up there and a foot popped, and that's where he fell and broke himself up and had to be crafted off. Make sure when you get to that shelf that you sew this thing up, whether you're freeing it or aiding it, sew it up, because it's shallow and it's thin. And if you rip even 2 pieces of gear, you'll deck and hit this, and you don't want that happening at 2,500 feet. The next pitch is the pitch that I absolutely hate the most on El Cap if I'm cleaning it. We call it, my buddy Dr. Gonzalez, who's a pathologist, calls this the gynecological surgery crack, because it's kind of two flared walls like this. Right wall's a little bit straighter, but the other one curves a lot, and the crack is way back in there. So you're just like back. Oh, it's just horrific. And it's bad enough to leave, but when you're jugging that thing, it is a nightmare. There's just no way to make it look pretty. And it's fairly long. So you're going up the thing, and your jugs are getting eaten by the crack, and they get sucked in there, and then the rope's getting sucked in there, and you're always going to pull it out. So what I do for cleaning it is I stay in the bottom of my aiders, and I keep my feet spread. I'm pretty flexible, even though I'm old. I keep my feet spread real far apart and plant them on both sides of the wall to keep the rope and the jugs out of that where the crack starts to constrict. Otherwise, it just becomes a repeated nightmare. It's not that hard to free climb, probably 11A, but we tended to aid it because we were getting usually pretty tired by that time. Then it turns into pretty easy slabbing and some shelves that come up here to the, the next to the original camps. The only pitch that I ever, I think the only time I ever backed off a pitch, I was doing it with Bob. I was doing a night with Bob and Chris, and so it was my turn. I was going to lead the block to the top actually, and right here, and this has been the scene of many accidents. Another place to be careful, right? You scramble up these like 5-5 ledges here, and you got this left-facing corner, right? And for about, I don't know, 40, 50 feet, you actually climb this razor thin crack. You can see it right there. Very, very thin. It just takes tiny, tiny gear in this gray rock. It's steep. The rock is not featured. And so you're putting in, little tiny nuts. I don't think there, at least last time I did, there's no fixed gear. Putting in little teeny nuts. And, I was about 15 or 20 feet off the shelf, and all of my gear I felt was shaky. I had little offsets, and I was like, man, if I could just get 2 alien cams in somewhere, I'll be happy. And then I get to like 25 or 30 feet up, and I just feel like I'm going to zipper, and my head was not in it. And Dr. Bob was like, come down, Grant, going too slow. That's kind of how we do things. If you're going slow, down you come. So I lowered out, which is actually probably stupid and more dangerous. And then he let it, and he didn't like the gear either. But once you get, I don't know, it's like 30, 40, 50 feet up this thing, then you move to the right-hand crack, and it's very straightforward. You can kind of mix free and aid, French free it. There's some places where you're almost chimneying, and then you get.
Is that the glowering spot there?
Right here. Yeah. Yep. And then you have a weird. This is all kind of, you can see the runoff lines here, right? Glowering spot is really, really super spectacular. If you look at what it looks like on Google Earth, it's really, really something. So if I go 3D this guy, right, and then zoom down into that upper dihedral zone. My hands sweat even looking at this on Google Earth. You get into those upper dihedrals there. Oops, so I broke through the matrix. Yeah, down spots there. So when you get into those upper dihedrals, it's really super spectacular. But it's kind of unnerving. When you leave glowering spot, you're kind of climbing up this stuff that's kind of weird and highly featured, but water polished all at the same time. It's a little odd. And then right here this is the changing corners pitch, right there. And again, that's another one of those things. It's like, how in the world did anybody ever free climb that? I just don't understand it. So here's a real good trick for several places, but especially the changing corners pitch. Get some kind of an extending rod. My buddy Chris had an old Mercedes antenna, and he had put a little clip on it so he could reach up, because these bolts are pretty far apart going up the outside of changing corners. So get yourself a little cheater stick, and if you can extend your reach 3 or even 4 feet with your aider attached at the top clip, it is much easier than trying to get in your top steps, because it's very, very steep right there. So you work your way up through the bolt ladder, and the bolt ladder ends. You kind of step around to the right into the right hand corner, and there's probably a couple of fixed pins that come and go. It takes decent small gear, little cams and stuff, and then you look up and you'll see this crack, and this is going to look like a terrifying, arching, overhanging layback. Like, how am I going to do that? That's too pumpy if you try and free it. But you actually climb this beautiful thin finger crack, and right in the middle of the wall, there's 2 bolts. So that's the end of the changing corner pitch. And then you get into the kind of overhanging crack, and you can free climb around 10C. It's a couple moves. Then you get into this easier stuff here. And finally, I mean, my partner always call this the grovel pitch because you end up in this alcove. It's wet, it's slimy, there's gross stuff in there, it's stinky, and you kind of work your way through that. It's pretty straightforward. It's like probably, I don't know, some moves are 5/8 and some are maybe 10A, but you can protect it anywhere you want. Gets slabby at a few points. And then you come out to the wild stance, which is right here. And it's the most spectacular place on earth I've ever been, because you can see the whole route. You can basically see every pitch except underneath of the great root moves, obviously. And then you have this final. This is actually one of my favorite pitches on it. I always insist on leading this pitch, the last pitch, because the bolt ladder's a pain, but that opening 10A moves into this kind of 10A crack here is so beautiful, and the exposure is sick. I mean, it's sick beyond belief. But the crack is bomber. It's like 510A or B layback, I think. It eats gear. Unfortunately, it's over too soon. It's like, I don't know, 40, 50 feet or something. And then you start clipping the bolts over the overhang. Can't get lost at that point.
Wow. You really know it, huh?
Well, the guy you want to talk to is Hans, because, you know, I would
Yeah.
talk to Hans and he's like, I was like, yeah, I fell off on this one part of, you know, pitch 11. And he's like, oh yeah, well, there's this little nubbin off to the left. If you stem out, I'm like, how do you know about a nubbin on El Cap? I
Yeah.
was supposed to do his number 120 with him. We were working on getting it set up, but then he busted himself all up, so it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Any specific pitch questions or other gear questions, or, you know, stuff about efficient ways to do, I don't know, to set your rigs or your lower outs or any of that kind of stuff?
Can you tell me again what you talked about with that lower out lasso thing? You said you
Yeah.
had like how long was that?
Mhm.
And like what would you do with that?
Yeah. So what I did was, because I'm always trying to figure out, you know, how to do things more efficiently, because the last time I did this, I was 54, I think. And, you know, at that age, you know, doing something this big, the next day I'm in agony. And so, you know, it's all about being more efficient and using less energy. So what I do is I got a piece of Spectra cord. I think I was using Spectra, but any good Perlon, you know, I think it was like probably a 7mm line, you know, basically like a tag line, but enough that, you know, it would, you know, hold body weight under some pressure. And I would take about 60 or 70 feet of it, and the Spectra cord was you know, a little bit stiffer, a little bit more wiry, and so I could, you know, kind of make a loop like around, you know, like this, and so I'd have like a stiff loop of it, moderately stiff. After a couple of uses, it softens up, and then at the end I would make a permanent knot as a loop, right? And I would tie uh, I would clip that to my tie-in point, so I could clip it and unclip it whenever I wanted to. So I had a locker so I could clip into it, and then I would keep that, you know, on the back of my harness. So if I had, let's say that I have a series of 3 or 4 kind of little teeny lower outs, like the moves from the top of sickle over to dolt. If I don't, if I'm following that, instead of free climbing it or doing a long pendulum, which is a little dangerous into the corner, or doing a you know, doing you know, one long lower out, if I do a bunch of little lower outs, then I've got that thing right there, and so I can just feed it through and then lower myself out, pull it through, and I'm done. So essentially what I've got is, instead of doing, like, if you've watched like Chris's you know, if you've watched McNamara's different ways to do lower outs on his YouTube page, right? You can, like, you know, triple the rope up and feed it through and clip it and lower out. You can do it that way. That eats up a lot of rope. I was doing the first long rightward traverse on Lurking Fear with Tim, and I had never done that method before with the, you know, put the rope through and triple it and feed it out. And I thought, okay, I'll do that. So I memorized how to do it. I practiced it a few times at Stony, and I'll do it. And I'm halfway through the lower out, and I realized I'm now out of rope. That pitch, I had not done the route before. That pitch was longer than I thought. I have no rope. I can't pull any rope back because he's already short fixed, and I'm out of rope. and I've got a 20-foot swing, but it goes around kind of a little bit of a bend around an outside corner. And I don't know what's on the other side. Is it a corner? Is it a block? Is it a flake? And we're 1,000 feet up and it's windy and he can't hear me and I can't hear him and he's fixed anyways and leading because I just tagged geared him. So I pulled myself, 12 or 15 feet back up and I went back with my old method. So it's basically a free line about 60 or 70 feet long that I could do the longest. I could do a full lower out from the Boots Lake with something that long. It gives me, 20, 30, 40 horizontal feet, dead horizontal feet to work with no worries. I will
Yeah,
sometimes
cool. I like that.
Yeah, sometimes to control it, if I'm on very steep ground, I'll actually belay myself with it. In other words, I'll take like a big locking carabiner, clip it to my harness, and I will take that 7mm and the part that I'm trying to control, I will pass it through 1, 2, maybe 3 loops, and it just gives me friction going through, right? And so I can control it perfectly. So it does, it's no real weight, it's no real bulk, and it can serve as a tagline in a pinch if you need to. It's just helpful to have, those extra little pieces of gear like that.
Yeah.
I haven't
No,
seen
that's
anybody.
brilliant.
I haven't
love
seen
that.
anybody else do it. I should probably patent it and make $1 million.
Interesting. I got another question, Neo, unless you want to jump in. For us, I think that, we're probably, if we're honest with ourselves, we're probably right on the edge of being able to pull this off. Obviously,
That's what'll
I think
make
we
it
both
fun.
really, yeah. And like, we both really want to go for it, and we're trying to be humble about it and make sure we're not stupid, but at the same time, we want to, take a risk and do it at some point. What's a good litmus test in your opinion? Like what's a good way to like, where we can say like, all right, this is going to be a slog, but we can do it, versus this is going to be dangerous if we we bite off too much.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been, how long have you been climbing, Cameron?
7 years about.
Okay.
Probably tried climbing for 5.
Okay. Yeah, and if you're comfortable with the grade of free difficulty that you'll do up there, and you're good with granite, you know how to climb cracks, and on El Cap, on the nose anyways, you're not building anchors. I mean, if you can do the climbing, you don't have to. You can actually get away without as much technical knowledge in some ways. And the thing has, bolt anchors. I mean, if you have 2 70-meter ropes, you can get to the ground. Now, that doesn't mean you want to take it lightly. But yeah, the litmus test is if you're up there, especially if you've, crossed the, let's say the 1,000-foot mark and you're on your way to Dolt Tower. And if you're really worried, if like psychologically you're not into it, if you're getting emotionally upset, if you're kind of freaking out, you just have to kind of use your sense with it. And don't be bashful about backing off. I mean, I did it in 98, and my first go was 17 hours, but I was with the guy that knew the route. If I had known the route, I wouldn't have topped out. It's big. And then the next 2 times I tried it, I didn't top out. The first time I got to Dolt with Reed, that's where we spent the night right for Dolt, the bottom of Dolt Tower. And then the next time we wrapped off from above the Great Roof. We wrapped 2,300 feet because, between us, we had, probably 80 years of climbing experience. And we knew that we could not pull off that top 800 feet. We were just too wasted. We were almost out of water. And that was the wise thing to do. And so, we decided not to push it too much. So you just have to kind of use your, your spidey sense, basically, which is, and what I've seen on the 6 times that I've gotten up El Cap and the 4 times that I didn't get up it, is the people who top out are the ones who are always looking up and going, we would always yell, to the rim, we're going to the rim, right? That's the thing. But when you're looking down going, crap, this is really hard. And you and the psychological, kick is not in there, then yeah, come back and do it another day. You know, it's
Yeah,
really just a matter of just like your psychological judgment, you know?
I hear you. Yeah, I've felt that on even climbs smaller than that, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I'm, much more conservative with stuff than I used to be even 10 years ago. I don't want to get, really injured, especially because I do a lot of remote stuff. I don't want to get injured somewhere. And I don't want to get injured because, it'll take me, I'm almost 57. It'll take me too long to heal. All my partners have either gotten overuse injuries or fall injuries, and it takes them forever to heal, and they're never the same. So yeah, I used to do ridiculous. I mean, I was never an insane, dangerous climber, but yeah, I would lead, stove legs, 30, 40 pieces in between gear because we had a little rack and I was comfortable with that. I'd never do that now. Too scared, you know. So it's a matter of, set yourself kind of your time splits, your time, you want to do a sub 24. So, set your time splits. Look, if we're not at Dolt by this, if we're not at the Great Roof by this, then you know that, okay, that's a practice run. We're working the bugs out of our system. We're getting really fast at jugging. Um, you can tell people who are not experienced wall climbers because they slide it all the way up and they stand up and they pull and they're moving like ants. When you learn how to jug quickly, you're doing little 6 foot or 6 inch and you're running up the rock. And that's a completely different technique than the old school. So you just kind of have to get those systems dialed. And it's weird that there has to be this conjunction of, you have to have good weather. You can't have 35 parties up there gumbying all over the route. Your fitness has to be good. Your endurance has to be good. You have to have had good sleep, eaten well for the last week. And you just kind of have to have the psych for it. You just have to have the psych for it. And 3 of the 4 times that we backed off at different points, one was because we were out of water and I slid that block down and I just lost it mentally. I mean, there was no way I was continuing because I thought I was dead and I was going to kill my partner too. But the other 3 were just, both of us, we didn't feel the psych. And at a certain point we turned to each other and said, okay, that's it. I'm calling it, good climbing day, but we're not going to the rim, not today. So you just got to feel it out. Use your judgment.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, I hear that. On the well, I guess maybe you kind of answered this already through some of what you explained, but would you recommend carrying a like a second 70 meter to bail off of, like either 7mm line or something?
I would. Several times I've done it in a team of 2, but I've done it with a team of 3. And with a team of 3, then you have 2 ropes. So you can pretty quickly and easily bail if you need to. But I highly recommend that you don't go up with 1 rope. You can easily find yourself in trouble if you don't have, a full length tag that you can, wrap the single with the knot at the anchor and then pull through. Yeah, I highly recommend that. My partner Reed, who's climbed in Patagonia, he climbs pretty regularly in Alaska. He last year went up to the Aragetch Range, which is far, far, far north Alaska, big rocky peaks, like 60-mile hike in or something like that, after being dropped off from a float plane. He's climbed Patagonia. He's done hard stuff. He went up to do Provertical Sanctuary on the Diamonds in Colorado, and they went with a single 80-meter rope, brand new rope, and they got 2/3 the way up, and this huge storm hit, and he dropped his jacket, and he was going hypothermic, and they decided they needed to wrap, and so they had their single 80, so it was going to be more wraps. So they do the first pull, and the rope snags on a flake, like 60, 70 meters above them, and they're on hard 510 at 13,000 feet, and that was all they had. So they had to jug up. One of them, I think it was probably, it probably wasn't Reed. His buddy jugged up and got about 60 feet of rope, cut it, and then free soloed back down 5'9", 5'10" at 13,000 feet, with that length of rope. And then they did multiple tiny short wraps and ended up leaving their whole rack.
Man,
That
that's
stuff
just
happens.
like,
Yeah.
but they were all right.
They got back down, but if they had not solved that problem that way, yeah, they'd have been dead. Yeah, it would absolutely have killed them. Yeah. So
Scary.
I'm a big fan of, yeah, let's go light. I mean, my buddy Chris Gonzalez would always call me up. He's like, yeah, I shaved off the bottom of the gree. I shaved like 5 grams and I'm whittling down this thing. I'm like, stop whittling the gear. I mean, he's a weight fanatic.
Yeah.
Don't whittle the gear, dude. And yeah, an extra rope or even an extra full length tag. Yeah, it's a little bit of weight, a little bit of bulk, but you know what? You don't want to get up there and have to bail at the Great Roof and do all those, traversing wraps through the gray bands. I've done it and have one rope and then it snags. You're screwed. I would recommend bringing a full length tag. Yes, I think it's a smart move.
Cool. Great advice. Yeah, we were debating, so that's exactly what we needed here. Okay, one more thing, then Neo, I promise I'll let you jump in. And Grant, thank you so much for giving us so much time.
Oh, you're welcome. Hey man, I'm pumped for you guys. I want to see some photos when you do it. I'm psyched.
Yeah. Okay, short fixing. You mentioned you did do that. How much did you short fix on your more successful runs?
Yeah.
Was it every pitch, like certain pitches, certain blocks?
Yeah, we tended to do it pretty consistently. Last time, well, when I did Lurking Fear in 12 hours with Tim, we did let's see here. Let's see if I can show you something. Can you see that screen there? Are you able to see the screen that I just put up?
Yeah.
All right, that's the window pane flake.
Oh, cool.
On Lurking Fear, and we were never together the entire climb. He was usually between 30 and 80 or 90 feet out, and we were continually tagging gear. So it was basically like continually recycling the gear. So he would like tag, he would drop the thing down, a couple carabiners on it to weight it. It's a pretty straight, clean route, so it's not that hard to do. And so I followed the entire thing. That's why we did it so fast. If I'd have been leading, it would have been much slower. I'd never done the route before. So even like at the bottom, even at the bottom pitches down here, let's see. Yeah, you can see him right there, right? So he would lead up and he would get, 60, 70 feet out and he'd say, gear. We had a teeny rack. I mean, I think we had, let's see, you can see our Lurking Fear rack at the top here. Somewhere in here, they've got us. Yeah, that's our rack right there. Yeah, it's not much.
Not a lot.
It was like 10 pieces.
Jeez.
So, you're gonna
lower. How long should our tagline be? Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were talking.
Yeah, no. Yeah. So just for tagging gear, I mean, 100 feet should be more than sufficient. You're rarely going to be more than 100 feet out from your belayer if you're short fixing. A lot of fast parties, they keep themselves, 60 to 120 feet apart. But I think that a 100-foot tagline should be sufficient. That gives you, I mean, you could have 10 pieces of gear between you and your belayer, you and your fixed point. So probably, I mean, when I've done it with Chris, you know, he likes to do long leads and long blocks. So we had a 120 tag line, but it's light. It tends to flop around once you get that far out. So I would think 100 feet is generally sufficient for that. I think the one that I did with Tim was probably only 80 feet because he was never more than 80 feet away from me. But we like from the base to Thanksgiving Ledge, which is 2,000 feet or something, we were never together, never. You know, we just the whole time. And it's not like we were flying. It's just that we didn't stop. You know, the key is a good steady pace, really. That's really the key to doing it successfully, right? You know, you don't want slow changeovers at fillets or at block ends. You got to be super organized. And, you know, basically anything. I mean, the first time you do it, you're not trying to like break speed records, but you do want to like hone the system down so that there's no wasted time, because wasted time, you know, times 10 or 20 or 30 items where you've wasted time, that'll eat into your time. It adds up.
Yeah. Sorry, not to get super pedantic on the tagline, lower outlines and stuff.
Yeah, no.
Would is there a reason? Yeah, is there a reason not to just could we take like a 35 meter tagline and a 35 meter like lower outline that you talked about, and then use that as our bail line too? Like we could just like beaner block the rope and then
you could do that,
pull through, or are like not there those knots going to just screw us over on those pulls?
I mean, it'll depend on, you know, certain pitches, like if you had to like wrap down through the gray bands, that could be ugly. If you had to wrap from El Cap Tower to Dolt Tower, there's a bunch of, I once had to jug up a rope because it got stuck up above Dolt 2/3 the way to El Cap Tower, because there's these big rope eating flakes off to the right. So you just have to be super aware that there's all kinds of places that want to eat anything bulky, and it'll just wedge in there, and then you're original. But you can do that. I've seen people do it. I haven't done it, but I've seen people do that. Yeah. One of the guys I've climbed with just likes to take, you know, like a 9.6 lead line or a 9.8 lead line, like 80 meter, and then he has a 70 or 80 meter tag, and that's what they'll use for rope pulling. They just do the classic tag rope pull, and that works. Yeah, a lot of times you're kind of, you know, tying off the gear. You're not using the whole length of it, and they'll pull it up, but that works. Yeah, you just have to figure out what you can do that'll be efficient, that you could handle, you know, in the dark, in the wind, in the cold, if that happens, and you know, a lot of times it does. Yeah, you want to keep it as simple as possible.
I hear you.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's not pedantic at all. I'm pedantic for a living, so I know about that stuff.
Cool. Neo, any questions? I feel like I've been taking up all the time.
No, this is all the questions I would have asked you covered as well.
So what are your plans? Did you say you're gonna try and do like a Dolt or El Cap Tower run on Thursday? Yeah.
That's the goal. Yeah.
That'll boost your confidence a lot. That'll boost you when you get into stove legs and you're just climbing, you know, 700 feet of that slammer hands. Man, your head's gonna explode. It's so good. It's so good.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I feel like we'll know Dolt if we can get there by 5 hours. I think.
Sorry. Whoops, wrong button. Sorry about
Neo,
that.
your audio is still hurting.
Yeah. Busted up there for a second.
Yeah, come in. You can just join my computer if you want to, Neo. Yeah, come on in. 1 sec.
There we go. Boom. Okay. Can you still hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
You cannot. Uh-oh. We cannot hear.
Okay, let me see if I can figure out what's going on.
There we go. We got it. Okay, this is all on We're technologists for a living, so we live to screw this stuff up.
I got it. I
Um,
got it.
Yeah. So I think on Thursday, if we can get to Dolt in like 4 or 5 hours, I think we'll just get so psyched about the whole thing.
Yeah.
No, I think that will be the test piece for us. Like,
Mhm.
can we get to Dolt in 5 hours? If we can, I'd really want to give it a shot.
Yeah, I think you
bummer-
probably, you know, have a good chance of doing that.
Yeah. I think we're both good at grinding, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm like a mountain runner, so I have a lot of endurance
Yeah.
generally. So that'll hopefully help, you know, like who
Yeah.
knows really,
Putting
but you know,
putting
that
putting up
that
with
has helped in the long outline days.
putting up with pain and doubt for an extended period of time. Yeah, that's definitely what what it's all about. There's no doubt about that for sure.
Yeah. And we've both done like 24-hour climbing before too.
Mhm.
So you know, that's I feel okay if we have to climb really truly 24 hours straight. I feel like I'd be okay because I've done it before and he's done it before
Yeah.
too. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys
Yeah.
have a really good shot at it. And yeah, doing it by um, you know, building it in stages, I think is a very, very smart way to do it. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
big question for you on blocks. Okay, so what are the blocks you'd recommend? We have some ideas of what we're thinking, but yeah,
Yeah.
what have you done that like worked?
Yeah, it's definitely helpful to be brutally honest with each other about what your strengths and weaknesses are. Okay. So if one of you is better at, you know, endurance, and if you're going super light, you know, where the second man is not, you know, carrying much in a pack, which I think is the way to go. Um, you know, having your person with the long-term endurance leading the last couple pitches is very helpful. But you know, you can break it up where you have that delicate technical stuff. Like we would do block one to the base of stove legs. So you've got, you know, 5 pitches, 6 pitches, something like that. And then you have to from stove legs to El Cap Tower, where it's wide and a little bit more burly, pretty clean, pretty straightforward climbing. You're not going to get lost there. And then we would do El Cap Tower to the you know, the belay at the bottom of the Great Roof, and then we would do. Sometimes we would break Great Roof to the top, which is, you know, it's 800 or 900 feet. Sometimes we would break that into two 450-foot blocks just because that stuff is hard and steep. But I've also done it where I led the Great Roof to the rim because uh, that climbing is very clean and steep, and it's very easy to tag gear up. And we just stay 60 feet apart and just zip, 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 zip. I've also followed that. It's harder to jug that upper part than any other part of it. Now it's also kind of hard to jug. You know, the jugging hits you in the face when you get to the stove legs, and it's vertical and it's completely clean, and you're like, whoa, this is pretty tiring. So that's where you kind of get your jugging rhythm from it. But the upper faces are steep. I was following Chris Gonzalez on the Great Roof Pitch once, and there was some huge Russian team up there. They must have had 12 people up there, all speaking Russian, and they had fixed a line from, you know, all the way across. They had a fixed line running up the route of the Great Roof Pitch, right? And they had all this gear jammed in there, and it was like, well, we can't. It was dark, and we're like, well, we can't lead through their junk, and they just left it there, which is kind of rude. But there were several other fixed lines, 2 or 3 fixed lines, static, that ran from there up angled to the next belay. And so the Russian guys that were below were yelling in Russian to the guys that were up above, and they decided they were going to come back down and spend the night there. And we said, hey, can we just jug your lines? We've done a Great Roof Pitch before. It's no big deal. We'll just jug it if you don't mind. So he said, oh yeah, we jug it. So my buddy jugs it. He gets up there, and then I've got him short fixed while I'm jugging the Russians' fixed lines, right? So he's up there doing the pancake flake in the dark. I can kind of see his headlamp shining around up in the dihedrals. and I'm jugging this pitch. It's pitch black, and my buddy jugged it, so I knew the rope was fine, but it's still scary jugging somebody else's rope, even though it was put up that better. So I'm jugging this big static line, and I'm going up, and I had, you know, the little pack on my back, but I just didn't think it through. The rope was kind of angled like this up the wall. The pitch normally goes like that, but this fixed line, and it was kind of loose, so it made kind of a J. So as I'm going up, you know, it's free hanging, and I got my pack, and I'm tired, and I'm getting irritated because one of my jugs was jamming a little too much, and I went like this, and I bumped my eyelid, and I knocked my contact out. And
Oh shit.
I'd never done El Cap with contacts before. I always wore my glasses. So I'm like, oh crap. So I'm like turning my headlamp down. I'm spinning in the air because the rope's free hanging. I'm spinning 2,200 feet up, and I'm like headlamping down. Okay, I got on my arms and stuck to my crap. I lost my freaking. So now I'm not going to have depth perception. And it was my block. You know, the last 6 pitches were going to be my block, so I can't lead. And Chris is like, what the heck's taking so long? He's yelling down there. I'm like, I lost my contact. And I'm jugging. So I finally get up to the belay. And he's like, what the heck's taking so long? I'm waiting for you to tag gear. I'm like, sorry, dude. So I tagged the gear up. And then I'm trying to figure out, you know, this is going to be really irritating. And I look down, and this is like 20, 30 minutes later after a nightmare jug. I look down, and there it is, all curled up like on my sleeve. And I carefully go in to get it. And I'm like, all right, I don't have, you know, I had some like eye moistener stuff. So I kind of moistened up, stuck it back in. It still hurt like crazy. But that was a nightmare, jugging an angled rope like that. So the jugging is more tiring than you think. And you really want to practice and get that down, because if you jug a block and you arrive at your lead block exhausted, that's tough. That's surprisingly, I think it's one of the number one things that causes people to fail, even really fit people like you guys, is you've got to keep that pace up, but you've got to arrive at your lead blocks not exhausted from jugging. So you've got to get that technique down to where your feet are going, you know, like 5 to 6 inch rises each time. Take a bunch of, you know, if second man is jugging in like light approach shoes, something like that, tape up the front, put like several layers of athletic and duct tape on them, because it will eat the front of your shoes up. Tape the front of those things, and it'll save it for you if you're using something like that. Climbing shoes obviously can't do that.
Yeah. On the so our thought right now is Neo's worked the bottom, the sickle pitches. We shared it once, and then he's worked those mainly. So, and then he really, I don't know, you can speak for yourself, but kind of hits his groove at the top of those, like he starts firing. Yeah. And so we want to kind of keep that momentum going. So we're thinking, you know, Neo leads to Dolt, and then I take Dolt to around the great roof is the idea.
Yeah.
And then would you recommend switching at the bottom of the great roof or like Camp 5? Because you got that shitty juggy pitch. It's that jugging pitch with like the flared corner.
Yeah, realistically, it's probably about even up either way, I think.
Yeah.
I would base it on how both of you feel at the time. It's going to be about even up.
Yeah. But you don't think that pitch right before Camp 5 would thrash the jugger right before their lead block too much?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. It should probably work either way.
Okay, that's kind of what we were. Whatever works there.
And you know, I haven't talked to Hans real recently, but I remember probably not for, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, but from what I remember him saying, is that you know, you want to minimize your changeovers, you know, so longer blocks, like three 1,000-foot blocks, because, you know, leading is one kind of physical and one kind of stress, mental stress, and jugging is another. And so it's not like, oh, I'm off lead, now it's easy. Oh no. Jugging 1,000 feet, dealing with traverses, dealing with low routes, you know, it's tiring. It's tiring.
Oh yeah.
So 3 1,000-foot blocks, I've done it that way. I've broken it into a bunch of like, you know, 5 and 6 pitch blocks where we did like probably 5 or 6 blocks, something like that. So just kind of look at the pitches and figure out where seems to be the easiest. And you know, I think Hans has said a number of times, like in webinars and stuff, that it's a pretty good bet for most strong young teams that are trying this for the first time. You know, do a couple practice runs and then go for the rim, but expect that it might take you 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 tries to do it. That's not unusual. I mean, it's a huge project. I mean, I think it's the greatest project in the climbing world is doing the Naiad. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's so much fun. So, you know, if you gun it with everything you have and you don't make the rim, I mean, let's say you get the great roof and you do the 2,000-foot wrap. Okay, then you did 2,000 feet of the best climbing and the best cliff on the best climbing area in the world. That doesn't suck. That's not a bad day. That's all right, we didn't go to the rim. The other thing is, have you guys looked really carefully at the descent stuff for East Ledges? Has either of you been up there and done the descent?
Yeah.
Let me do this for you.
Kind of scared to even like let myself think about the descent.
Yeah, you need to. So let me do
Yeah.
this. Let me bring one more thing up here. Because if I show you a couple things on Google Earth, it'll change your life as far as dealing with the
I'm
descent.
gonna grab my book that has some notes on it too.
Yeah.
Actually, this might.
So get this
Can you look at that? I'm gonna grab my free climb book because I know it has stuff.
Yeah, right here.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty good. Nice. We got Eric Sloan's big wall book here that has some
Okay.
stuff helpful.
Okay,
But we'd
Yeah.
love to see.
that will help. I can show you some things that will definitely
Yeah, Google Earth
make
is like.
things better. I know Google. Okay, so can you see the Google Earth that I screen shared here?
Mhm.
Okay, so yeah, so there's your route. And you'll do it. You'll do it. It might take you a run or two, but you'll do it. It's going to blow your mind. It'll change your life. It's the coolest freaking thing ever. So what happens is when you top out on this guy, you have to be very careful because when you know exactly what you're doing, it's easy and fast. I've been down in 90 minutes before from the top of the nose.
Oh wow.
But you have to be really careful. So what happens is the top of the nose is right here. All right. So you top out, there's the famous tree. Okay. You don't want to be too close to the rim, but you don't want to start going up the dome either. Right. So what happens is you just kind of walk along here. It's real sandy, right? You walk along here, you're going to pass the first kind of little dish area where it gets some runoff. It's pretty obvious. You'll see a bunch of forest over here and a lot of manzanita. Don't go into that. Just follow the kind of runoff down here. And what happens is you're going to come to a pretty obvious little kind of gully runnel thing. So if I spin this, you'll see it, right? This right here is the little runoff trough that becomes Horsetail Falls right here. Okay, that's the top of Horsetail, right? This is the top of the East Butte right there. Okay, Zodiac tops out like right here. So what happens is you don't go into the Manzanita tunnels. You'll be hating life and it won't help you at all. Okay, you get closer and closer to the edge. Okay, if you're not too exhausted, right, you can go like there's a couple of sick overlook places like right here, right? And you know, you never have to get to 10 or 15 feet or so from the edge. And then what happens is you're going to cross the gully, but if there's any moisture in there at all, cross well above the drop off because it can be very slick. So I usually cross it right about here, pop through the Manzanita, and then you kind of work your way through some Manzanita tunnels here. It's fairly obvious. Watch out because you're going to be tired. Make sure that all your, loops of runners and stuff like that is like tucked behind you because it'll grab every branch to make you trip. And then what happens is you start going down through all this stuff right here. Okay. And there's a bunch of big, wide open slabs, and you're way up there. You cannot fall here. Now, most of this is kind of third classy, a little bit of fourth classy. There's usually cairns around, but you can't always count on that. And what happens is you pop out from some of the manzanita, and then you have a couple different options. Most people do some kind of zigzagging back and forth down these slabs. Just follow the line of least resistance. If you feel like you need a rope, you're off the route, right? It's just very third classy. It's kind of slick at a few points. Sometimes you're traversing, sometimes you step down. But you know, you guys are craggers, so you know how to do that stuff. You zigzag down. At that point, you have two options. One is to do kind of more exposed down this way, and the other is to go through, it's not Werner Braun, who's the other German guy up there, Yusho guy. He basically hacked a tunnel through the manzanita here. And then you drop under these blocks. I hate it. It's a nightmare. Don't do it. Stay out of the manzanita. Follow it down through here, and you will pop through some manzanita at the base. And then you're going to see this this place where it looks like it'd be a really cool sport climbing crag, right? Big roofs, overhanging wall. It's a big black diorite, and it has these big white quartz dikes, and these are the famous wild dikes right there. You can't miss it. Okay, it's the only place that has that big kind of roofy thing. There's a bunch of manzanita up under it, and these crazy lightning bolt dikes right here. At that point, what happens is you work your way to the right down these slabs. Here's where you've got to be really careful. You don't need a rope, you just got to be careful. And you will work your way over to, there's several, and I know you've looked at the topos, there are several different ways you can do it. There's a pretty obvious tree that you scramble down to. It's right over here. And then there'll be a set of ropes, fixed lines. They'll be up by this time of year that take you on multiple wraps down the left side of this buttress. The one known as descent route C is no good, where you drop down to these trees and go down these slabs. That's ugly and dangerous to get to. There's loose rock. You'll see it. There are rings and chains and old runners around the tree. It's pretty obvious, and you'll see one or two or more fixed lines. Just be super careful that if there's multiple lines, that you're picking a line that's actually a fixed line, because people have been killed up there when someone pulled a rope and it got stuck, and then they left, and someone came later, and in the dark, when they were going from wrap 2 to wrap 3 right here at one of these trees here, grabbed one of several lines, started wrapping, and the rope that had been stuck by someone earlier pulled out behind the flake, and the guy died. So you have to be super, because you're going to be really tired. So work down the fixed lines here. Then you'll get into some kind of pretty easy down climbing. There's like one or two more short wraps, and it dumps you out. It dumps you out like right down around in here. You work through the forest. It's pretty obvious, well-worn trail. Drops you down this gully here. It's not far at all, but it seems like forever because you're so tired. When you end up in the drainage, this is what do you call this? Manure pile. And at that point, the trail is pretty obvious. It works through the woods, and it'll take you right over to the road here. And then you just stick your hand out, or you do the walk. It's not a long walk. I find it much safer, especially at night, to stay about 30 feet left of the road and just walk through the forest. I don't like walking along that road at night. It's just kind of dangerous.
I hear you.
Anyways, my buddy Pete was there when the giant piece fell off of El Cap. He's the guy that filmed it. Pastor Piton's Pete. Yeah. I talked to him right after it happened. He's like, I thought I was dead. They had just nailed right past that feature when it came off. Massive feature. Look at that rock fall. Jeez. It's crazy.
I know Ryan, the other guy that was up there with them.
Yeah, I've never met him before.
Yeah, he was pretty shooken up.
Yeah, that video is terrifying to watch, man. I mean, I've seen some big rock fall up in the Palisades. I do a lot of alpine stuff, and I've seen and heard some big rock fall, but I couldn't imagine being around the valley when that happened. Golly,
Truly.
terrifying.
That descent looks like that's the crux.
It might be. We'll
Man.
see how hard the rest is.
Yeah, we'll really have to be careful with that.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of loose rock. That's why the
Yeah.
nose is great, because it's very clean. You still have to be careful, but it's pretty
Yeah.
clean.
Yeah. No, thanks for walking us through that. That was
Yeah,
helpful.
thank you so much.
Yeah, and if you want to do some more, we can always talk by phone or Zoom or whatever. So yeah, you have my number, Neo. So let me know if you're going to launch, and let me know when you get down or how it goes or whatever. I definitely want to keep up with it.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted.
Cool.
Definitely.
Yeah, I once sent Davis McGinn. He was working at the gym, and I sent him photos, and I did a little live video of me doing the king swing last time I did it.
Yeah.
I just had my sky in the background. Said, "Hey, Davis, are you at work?" He's like, "Yeah, where are you?" I said, "I'm on the king swing," and I ran across. And then a couple of years ago, I went up. I did the I had done the Eiger once before with a retired guide, the 38 North Face route, and then I went back up and soloed it a year and a half ago.
Wow.
2 years ago now. I went up and soloed it, and I sent him a bunch of photos and videos while I was doing it.
That's awesome.
I was FaceTiming and he didn't pick up, and then I texted him. I said, "Dude, I'm on the Eiger. I have service. Pick up." And he's like, "I'm at work. I'm gonna get fired, but I'm picking up anyway." So he literally went in the bathroom and he put in the stall, and we were FaceTiming when I was up on the north face of the Eiger. It was sick.
I would hate you and love you at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, we were basically both crapping ourselves for sure. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got any other questions that you can think of?
No, I think we're good for now. We'll definitely keep you posted after Thursday. We'll and we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just remember, it's climbing. The reason we do it is because it's fun. I mean, if you're having fun, you will go to the rim. And when you're starting to lose it, just wrap off, go have a beer, relax, watch a movie. You can always come back,
Yeah.
Yeah, you can always come back. I mean, after I did it the first time, I bailed twice before I did it the third time.
Yeah.
No big deal.
My last sickle run was just so fun.
It's great climbing. And as I told you in the text, that to me, those are like some of the yuckiest pitches to lead on El Cap, and they're good.
Yeah,
they're actually good. Yeah, I just don't like that low angle slick stuff.
It's still slick though. Yeah, P1 is so hard for me. I sew that shit out.
Oh yeah.
And I was not optimistic after P1, but then P2 through 4 went pretty well this time. So
those are so good. Yeah, those are so good. And it just kind of gets better and better as you go. I mean, you get more exposure, you get to better rock. You just kind of ignore the crappy stuff in the gray bands. But the Stovies are incredible. That coming off of that, I mean, you'll never forget the first time you do the king swing. It's sick. I mean, everything you've heard about it lives up to the reputation. Yeah, it's just fun.
If we do a boot run, if we make it to the boot on Thursday, should we do the king swing or should we save that, do you think?
I would do it that way. You'll get it dialed and you'll be faster if you come back off, because it's not that hard to wrap off the boot. You just have to be careful when you do the wrap off of El Cap Tower, and then you kind of, as you get to the bottom, you go back over to where you had kind of down climb to Dolt, right? If you're gonna wrap down that way, you just got to watch when you pull your rope, because there's a lot of flake action down in that alcove. And I've stuck the rope there before. You just have to, give your rope a real hard pull so it doesn't go into the 5/9 crack or all that broken stuff off to the right. It's not that hard to do. You just have to be attentive. Rope management is everything on doing these big long routes. It's everything. That's why when I take people out sport climbing, they're like, "Yeah, I want to go do Talkeets." I'm like, "But you don't know how to coil a freaking rope yet. You're not attentive with your management of the rope. I'm not going to take you on multi-pitch. Get the handling of the rope down. Treat your rope right, and because if you don't, you're going to be real sad 2,000 feet up a wall someday. You have a big rat's nest and everything's stuck and you're screwed. It's no good."
First week I got into climbing, talked to a guy that that did the nose. Do you know Corey McLean? Him and his brother George.
I don't know that.
Okay, yeah, they did the nose on site when they're for the first try. But anyway, worked with him. They're cool dudes, just the nicest people, like similar to you. And talked to him like a week into climbing, told him I was psyched, and got a beer with him, told him about his nose stories, and just got me just planted that dream, that's been keeping me going.
That's cool.
But he said first thing, he's like, yeah, it's all about systems. Like if you watch them with binoculars up there, you can't mess around, and and he said so yeah, couldn't agree more.
You just gotta dial that stuff, and it's a set of skills you build as you go, and you guys have enough experience to do it. Yeah, I remember, I had been climbing for less than a year. I mean, I've been climbing 42 years. I'm actually in my 43rd, beginning of my 43rd year now. And I remember a year in, I mean, you still saw people with hammers and an occasional piton out at the crags, right? Clean climbing was actually fairly new. It was like 6 or 7 years old at that point. Not everybody had nuts, but I remember I went to, a local outfitter, and I bought, the first edition of the 50 Classic Climbs of North America, and I opened it and I saw El Cap. I was like, I'm going to do that someday. I had no idea of the scale,
Yeah.
I mean, I was climbing little 30-foot cliffs in Maryland, but I was like, I'm going to do that someday. So you just get the dream and you go for it.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
It.
Yeah. You'll be on a psych for a month, and then you'll be planning your next run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. All right, Grant. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
again.
You bet.
We'll keep you posted.
Yes, do that.
Yeah.
And let me know.
We'll take here after when we get back. For allowing us to.
And I expect to see a picture of you guys fist bumping on the rim there. And let me know when you get back to LA. Cameron, are you from like LA area?
Yeah, I'm living in LA now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Have you guys ever, I mean, I don't know if you're into sport climbing or not. I mean, I'm a trader, but I still do a lot of sport climbing. Have you guys ever been out to Fairview to do any sport climbing out there in the desert by Victorville?
Once. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I haven't yet, but no, I've heard of it.
Yeah. I've been, I joined Jay and one or two of the other guys, like Dave Evans, who's like probably the most prolific guy from the J Tree Golden era. He's 72 and he still climbs out there. Anyways, my Hilti died, and I got a brand new Bosch, so I've been bolting the crap out of stuff out there all year. I put up like
nice.
I put up like 22 new routes in the last.
Are you out there with
weeks.
like Todd Gordon all the time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Every now and then Jay updates the little Facebook. I don't do Facebook, but he updates the Facebook page. He's like, here's Grant on some obscure new route. But yeah, if you guys ever want to go out there and get the full tour, I'm up to I'm probably close to 300 routes up there now that I've done. And we're exploring this new area, and there's potential for 1,000 more, like literally 1,000 more routes. I feel like I'm walking into a smaller scale Joshua Tree in 1961. That's what it feels like.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Wait, if you have 2 more minutes, I got one more question for you.
Yeah, sure.
So I did San Jacinto the other day, last week.
Yeah.
Like that slog of a hike up the Cactus to Clouds, and we took the tram down, and there was just like all of this like amazing looking granite, just like the whole mountain, like that top part. But there's nothing. I didn't do a lot of research. But is there anything out there that's like developed, or like what's the deal with that area?
People have been bouldering out there for decades. And there are some people that are doing it. One of my partners has a house in Idlewild, and he knows about this stuff up there, but I've never been there. I've done a lot of, I've done everything at Takis and Suicide. I mean, up to like 512 minus. I don't climb that hard. But yeah, there's endless. I mean, there's just endless granite there. And even the batholiths up there by Victorville, the first time Jay took me, he's the guy that did the guidebook. First time Jay took me past the main area that's got about 350 routes, I crested over this hill and I was like, what the heck? I can't believe this. It was just endless crags. And it's pretty concentrated. I mean, I basically laced up a whole wall. I put like 8 routes from 5.8 to 5.11. There's a potential 5.12 on it. And the climbs are all 3-star routes. They're just really, really good.
Wow.
So there's so much rock in California. It's just unbelievable. Yeah, if you guys
Yeah.
ever want to learn how to do route development, I mean, I bought the drill to teach all the kids from the gym that I've been teaching. If you want to go out and learn how to,
Awesome.
find
Pretty
and clean
fun.
routes and bolt them. I mean, I'm buying bolting gear in bulk right now. I got a bunch of fixe stuff that's kind of on back order because all the supply chains are still messed up. But I got 140 bolts and hangers and a bunch of those nice big fixe, permanent, lowering systems, and just burned right through them. Got a bunch of.
That's awesome.
Yeah, if you ever want to learn how to do that, come on out. We'll do it. It's fun.
Yeah, I'd love
totally.
to.
All right, Grant.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Yeah.
We'll
Nice
talk
to
to
meet you,
you.
Cameron.
We'll FaceTime you when we get our ropes tangled. Get some advice.
Hey, I'm good at tangling ropes, man. I can still do that. All right. Nice to meet you, Cameron. You guys be safe and have a lot of fun, right? To
Yeah.
the rim. To the rim. To the
Yeah,
rim.
to the rim.
Got it. Bye, guys.